Good morning, everybody. We are live from the Hive. Hello, hello. It's good to see you guys. The camera's aimed awful low. It's almost like I was, Anyway, I am still under the weather a bit, so thank you so much for hanging in there. Let me check my audio real quick because I've been having some audio issues lately. Are you hearing me? It looks like you are. Okay. And I don't know if could you hear the spider video? Let me know about that too, because I'm still working out kinks about this stuff here. But those are my booping instructions for a spider. Just a second. I'm sorry. This is such a rough start. Like I said, I'm under the weather. So good morning, everybody, and much love from the Hive. So, as you were talking about in the side chat earlier, Hurricane Ian made its way up the coast and did some damage in Florida, I understand. Rocked a lot of people's worlds. Mage Grey Wolf, I'm understanding that Mage may be in Florida. I wish the best for Mage and their friends and family as they kind of dig their way out of this. Now, my son's name's Ian, so he's been getting ribbed nonstop about this because, they'll say Ian did this destruction. Ian did this in Florida. The other morning I messaged him. I said, I don't know what you did in Florida, but I think you need to lay low for a while because people are like really mad. He was like kind of worried for a minute until I explained that it's a prank, bro. It's a prank. All right. Trees blowing over. Let me see. Huge set of building plans. Just looking at what you guys were talking about before the show here, seeing what's up. I do know some people that were in the area. I know Kitty was down there because Kitty was messaging or sending things on her TikTok about the storm coming. So Kitty, I hope you're safe and made it through okay. Hey, Aunt Jur, I actually got to hang out with Aunt Jur the other night on Neil the 604 Atheist. It was pretty fun. We talked about all sorts of interesting topics, including burial and versus cremation. You know, what was better for the world at large. I am of the opinion that I would like to be buried in eco-friendly coffin, something that'll break down so that the earth can reabsorb me. That's my goal. I want to be reabsorbed into the earth. I think cremation wastes our nutrients as it ejects us into the atmosphere, into the upper atmosphere. A lot of the nutrition and vitamins in your body are just going to be wasted that way. I would love to be in one of those tree bags. I don't know how feasible they are, at least not for the average person to get that kind of burial, but I would rather be in like a biodegradable coffin or even a bag. Put me in a bag. I think 6 feet down is probably too far for a reasonable decomposition. I think 3 to 4 feet is probably going to be more plausible. Help the organisms get to me and break me down a little bit faster. That's my opinion. Yeah, plant some cool stuff above me. Endangered species above me would be really cool. Plant some endangered flora above me, so that they can take root and help restore the population via their vitality, that would be amazing. Um, so it is that time of the day where I do like a housekeeping thing. There's really not much to talk about. I did after last week's show, my brother's wedding. I went out to that, so that was fun. It was kind of like country themed or rural themed, wildflowers and cowboy hats and all that good stuff. I wore a floral dress. Did some dancing. It was fun. It was pretty. They had sunflowers and stuff. Um, I do appreciate the aesthetics of that culture, because that's the culture I grew up in. I grew up in rural Missouri. I grew up in farm country where, half the kids in the class, more than half the kids in the class got up, when they get to school, they'd been up for 2 or 3 hours because they'd been out tending the hogs or feeding the cows, doing all that country kid stuff that you had to do when you lived in that area. The reason people had so many kids was because they needed kids to help tend the farms. Now that my generation maybe would have been like the tail end of that type of culture, because that didn't last too much after that. Um, kind of that I don't know. I would say it died out. But there are still little family farms, but they're just few and far between now. It's kinda of a sad loss to the culture in the area. All the men goes went to work in the factories, and, yeah, I guess that's just the way things go as we develop, but, yes, I grew up very much in a culture like that um, where people farmed and people hunted and people lived off the land a little bit still, and especially when it comes to, well, let's just get into it because I don't have too much housekeeping. We're talking about, as you saw by the thumbnail, maybe Cannibal Hillbillies, right? And my family, my grandma especially, is an Appalachian. She's one of the Appalachian people. Her family moved. They were Irish immigrants. They uh, they moved into the new world, and they uh, did the land when they had the land grab, they did land grabs in the mountains and carved out a little niche, not too far from Seaverville. I think it was. We went to visit my grandma's aunt who still lived out there when I was a kid, when I was 7 years old. I can't remember what the name was, but they were she her aunt was an identical twin with her own grandmother, my grandmother's grandmother. So she was super old at this time. She was like I want to say she's like 103 when we went to visit her. Identical twins to my grandmother's grandmother, grandmother's mother. Yeah, identical twins to my grandmother's mother. I'm sorry, but yeah, uh, and they lived in a hillbilly house up in the Appalachia Mountains, way back in the woods. It was kind of cool. So, but that's just to say that I don't come at this culture, at this Appalachia culture with like unrelated eyes. I'm not blind to the culture and to the stories and to the folklore that surrounds these people because it goes back hundreds of years. Um, the Appalachia was the first frontier when people settled. You had your 13 colonies all along the coast there, and the western edge of those colonies was up against or in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. And there were native people that lived back in there, um, and they did vie with the settlers. There were wars and stuff between them. There were battles, especially early on, when you had different before the United States got its independence and such, there were vying, you know, empires that were making pacts with these native nations and whatnot that were in the West, beyond the mountains, or in the mountains and beyond in the lake areas. So it was a long, from the 1600s on up into the probably the mid 1800s. It was an ongoing conflict in this region to try to. I mean, that's what the Trail of Tears was the ultimate result of this, right? The ultimate culmination of all these events. Suddenly, every native, all the native people that are living in this region east of the Mississippi are just relocated, just jumbled up and herded across into the west, to be forgotten, to get out of the way for the white people, because those mountains were now theirs. So then you have these. Then it's the mid 1800s, right? And at the same time, you have this influx of Irish immigrants, a lot of poor people um, moving into the areas. Enter my ancestors, and these mountains were just cleared out of the indigenous peoples that lived there, and so the immigrants, they got their land grants. They were done with being ruled. That's why they came here. That's free free land, or not free land, but well, it was free land. It was, yeah, for Western expansion. It was free land. Yeah, let's not even get into Andrew Jackson, because that guy does not need to be on our money. That'd be like, yeah, it's like putting Mussolini on money. Yeah, and it was brutal what they did to the native people, and removed that. But suddenly, all this land was free of inhabitants, and it wasn't the. Again, I don't want to stress, it wasn't these new immigrants that 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 pushed the natives out. It wasn't their doing. They just came in their echo, looking for a place to live, in all this area the uh, between the Eastern Appalachians and the Mississippi River was open and ready to be claimed, and except for the upper part. I think some of the areas around the Great Lakes were still French territory for a while there, but we'll get into that when we at some point, I'm sure, when we start talking about and I do have a plan to. I think I'm going to do it in November, though. I'm going to talk about the beast that lived in the western reaches, before. Basically, what lived in Louisiana Purchase, what the mountain men reported back to the gullible reporters. We'll talk about that. It's going to be fun. Fearsome creatures is what they're called. But right now we're talking about the Appalachian Mountains. Okay, so they get these rural country people that were wanting to get away from being governed. They wanted to have their own little land and kind of rule themselves and self-sustain their little communities, or the loose knit communities, even live off the land, have their own little plot, and they did that in the Appalachian Mountains, and a culture developed, Appalachia culture, uh, with there's a lot of folklore and things roped into it, and for a long time it was cool, and they were isolated, and they lived in their own little world, and lived their own ways. They did, they traded with other people, but they were a completely separate culture from the mainstream, especially after the Civil War, because Appalachia, unlike the dividing lines would have you think, Appalachia was mostly poor, so you didn't have a lot of, and the big plantation farms were not real viable in that landscape. It was mostly little private family farms and such, and it didn't run across the south or the north. It ran up the mountain range from north to south. So you have this whole culture, interlaced communities running north to south, or running south to north or north to south, however you want to look at it, right there in the midst of the Civil War. So talk about brother against brother, because they weren't. this wasn't their war. They were, again, a completely separate culture. It came just to settle this region for the free land. We're not really wanted to be isolated. We're not really interested in uh, too much involvement with the politics of these two vying Western powers, the superpower down south with the because unlike people want to there's a reason why we call it antebellum, because before the Civil War the South was booming, it was thriving. After Louisiana Purchase was the best thing the United States government ever did, because is Godspeed was saying, with the slave trade down there and the Industrial Revolution kicking off in the cotton industry and the tobacco industry, the South was just booming and thriving. There were riverboats everywhere. That's why you see all these old images of people with the big flowing dresses and the big fancy ostentatious plantation houses, because they were really booming and really having a great go of life. I'm going to say they, I mean the European descendants that were in the area now. Obviously, the slaves were not having such a good go of things, but as far as the United States and the revenue that was coming in, it definitely the South was uh, just a pinnacle. And speaking of east of the or west of the Mississippi, I mean, that was St. Louis was like a beacon out there. So I mean, you had to cross this Appalachia area. So they did get these people in this area. They did get influenced by the outside world, and there was a lot of Southern culture that they incorporated, even all the way up into like the up near the Catskills and stuff. There was a lot of Southern culture that made its way up, and it's just because the rural nature of the area lended itself more to the Southern folklore than it did like maybe the more urbanized folklore. But folklore it did have. Folklore was the prominent output of the Appalachia people, and I got to grow up with it because my grandma was from one of these people, and um, we'd hear the stories about the wild men in the woods. It's a real thing that people talked about at that time, because yeah, they drove out the Native Americans, Trail of Tears, but allegedly there were wild men. Now I want to make it distinct, because the Appalachian people, every time I say Appalachia, I'm going to put an apple at you in the chat. Well, we can't even just the people of the regions can't even decide how they want to have it pronounced. It depends. There's like six. The Appalachia is divided into, or some people say Appalachie. I think my ancestor said Appalachie, but I don't like that. I don't think it. I don't. It doesn't roll off my tongue as good as Appalachia, and it's because I'm so used to talking about the continent Appalachia uh, from the Mesozoic era. There was what was it, Appalachia and Laurasia, were the two continents divided North America by the Western Interior Seaway. So it's because I'm a science nerd. But yeah, Appalachia. Where was I? I got totally off my spiel here. Okay, so we have these alleged wild men that live in this mountainous region, right? And they are not. Well, they're from. So my family was from around Severe. What would I say? Seaverville. Um, so I don't know how. I think they say Appalachie there. My my aunt Mary Jane always said Appalachie, but She also lived and was raised in North or in South Carolina, so that might be a difference there too. Language is a funny thing. Every state says it differently, right? Okay, so there was a difference between this isolated culture, okay, and these wild men. The isolated culture are the ones that reported on the wild men, and the stories and folklore that came back would sort of indicate that the wild men did kidnap women and children. Um, for breeding stock potentially. I'm not sure. They eat them. They were cannibals allegedly, but this really came to the forefront. For a while, this culture was isolated. My great grandma went to school in the 1920s, and it was still very much isolated, very much rural. They didn't have um, a lot of the conveniences you would have seen on the coast, like electricity at the time, plumbing, that sort of stuff. They still lived very much like it was still in the 1800s. They were not all the way up into the 50s. They were kind of behind because just the grid didn't come out there. It was difficult to cut your way through this dense miles and miles of mountains and forest, because unlike like say the Rocky Mountains, where the mountains rise above the tree line and then there's passes in between them. Appalachia is it had its heyday hundreds of millions of years ago, and it is now eroded down to just green mountains, is what we would call them, and they no longer rise above the tree line. At least not. There's one mountain I think that rises above still is above the tree line up in Maine, but the rest of the mountains don't rise above the tree line, so they are thickly forested from top to bottom, uh, including the little valleys that would run between. So when it comes to getting electricity, getting out there, getting plumbing out there, it was not my roboting. Okay, I'm roboting. Let me turn my camera off for a second. Okay, that should be better. Is Mount Mitchell above the tree line? I don't think it is. But anyway, so it's hard to get things out there. It's been hard to get things out there. It still is. There's still areas where they don't have a lot of the modern conveniences like fiber internet and things like that. Hell, there's areas around here in Missouri, of course. Missouri's got the Ozarks, which are kind of like little Appalachia, but anyway, so they were living in isolation out there and undisturbed by our culture for the most part, just doing what they can to get by. And then the National Park Service created the Smoky Mountain National Park, and a lot of these people had their lands just, nope, you can't live here anymore. You're gonna have to go. Which it happens. I mean, that's when they put in a dam. They need to make a lake. They have to what they call eminent domain to remove people, but they weren't engineering. Yeah, they weren't geoengineering the region. They were just cutting it off to leave it natural. So some of those people didn't even leave. They just stayed back in the woods. Allegedly, there's no proof of that, but obviously they aren't going to report themselves on the census illegally squatting in a national park, even though it was their land that they bought fairly, or their ancestors bought fairly, and they had worked that land for generations. There's an argument to be made there. Anyway, but they, people who wouldn't be bought out and all that. So you mix that with the early wild man sightings of these. They were essentially like a Sasquatch-like sighting. So you get that kind of mixed in together. Anyway, but to the point that I'm getting at, this culture really hit this section of Appalachian, this backwoods culture really hit the main scene when here recently when David Paulides, the missing 411 guy, talks about people who go missing in national parks. Let me see. Do I got something pulled up on David Paulides? I was going to give a quick, just a little rundown of who he is. Let's see. It's going to be in the Dennis Martin case. Just a second here. I had all this stuff pulled up, but you know me, I'm all over the place. So anyway, there was this famous case from the 1960s, Dennis Martin. Now, Dennis Martin was a 6-year-old boy whose dad took him to, him and his brother, I believe it was, took him to the Smoky Mountain National Park for Father's Day. All right, let me share. All right, so this is where they went. Let me know, make sure you can see this and everything looks good. Let me put myself back up on the screen because I like it like this. Okay. So this is the Great Smoky Mountains. It's a lovely little national park. I went there just a couple of years ago and did some great hiking. It's beautiful country. I went in early October. This is the whole park here. Yep, the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. You got South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee here. Obviously, South Carolina is far away from the park, so we're not going to talk too much about that. But that's where my family, half my family moved this way and half of them moved that way. But originally, they were from right around. Oh, I wish I could scroll zoom. Let me see. My family is from. Yeah, right around up in here. Southwest of Seaverville. They had land back up in here. Anyway, this is all the national park. And they were hiking in an area called Spence Field, which is where we're going to be right now. And the curious thing about Spence Field, and part of the problem with the whole deal, is that Spence Field is literally right on the border. Like right on the border. Look at that. You don't get much more on the border than that. And that does lead to some problems and some speculation about the Dennis Martin case. So, Dennis Martin was a 6-year-old boy on a nice day trip with, or I think they camped, so it was more than a day trip. I shouldn't say day trip. On a nice little trip with his dad and camping and having just a nice time enjoying the park, which is what I did. I did with my wife at the time, and we had a great time. Saw bears and all kinds of cool stuff. That's going to come into play too here in a minute. So, when they got up to the field, they met another family. A lot of hullabaloo was made about this other family having the same last name, but the last name is Martin. I know dozens of people with the last name Martin, so to me, it's not like, ooh, that's. But some people make a big deal about that, which is weird. Anyway, so they said, hey, let's have our kids play together up here in the field while we just hang out and chit chat and enjoy nature. And the kids started playing hide and seek, and Dennis went and about 55 feet away from his dad, he went and ducked behind a bush to hide and never came back out. Now there are predators, obviously bears and such in the park, hogs and bobcats, alleged eastern cougars. At the time, I would have. We're talking 1969, so at the time there may have been some cougars in the area. That's definitely not out of the question. But Dennis was never seen again. He ducked behind a bush and was never seen again. A huge search was done. A huge search. All the area. They called in National Guard and Special Forces, the Boy Scouts. Everybody was in on this, looking for it, looking for this poor boy who just disappeared into the mountains. The Keys. Okay, so there was this family. I think it was 5 or 6 miles away. Because they were looking, they asked the rangers, can you tell us where to go to see bears? So they told them to go up to this ridge where you could see some black bear. Funny story about that. I spent the whole day in the Smokies looking for black bears and didn't see a dang thing. Went to downtown Gatlinburg and there were bears just all over this dumpster. It was wild, like raccoons are up here. Um, so it's like you spend all day in the wild looking for them. All you need to do is find a dumpster if you want to see bears. Anyway, so they went out and were looking for it, looking for bears. I hadn't seen anything all day, and then one of the kids says, "Hey, look, there's a bear." Well, first I had heard a blood curdling scream. I guess I should lead with that. And then it said, "Oh, look, there's a bear," and looked up on the ridge. But then the father, Mr. Keys, went up and looked up there, and what he saw was not a bear. He looked like a man wrapped in furs carrying something. So, um, yeah, uh, they reported that, and I guess allegedly the FBI ignored it. Anyway, the so the Mr. Martin was kind of upset about them ignoring ignoring this report. So they the father's name was William. Anyway, so the Key's report kind of got pushed back, and then David Paulides shows up on the scene. Now he's the guy who has this. I want to call it a conspiracy theory, and I got roped into it too. If you want to say, people who get roped in conspiracy theories are dumb, well, that's me. I got roped into David Paulides' missing 411 conspiracy, and it took me years to dig myself out of it because he is basically, I have a hard time saying, I don't want to say he's a grifter, but he has taken advantage of these missing person cases to kind of build his own clout. So when it comes to David Paulides, take everything he says with a grain of salt. Any and each instance that he talks about, investigate it yourself because he makes a lot of inferences. He's not working for anybody but himself anymore, so he can present facts and fictions however he feels fit. He's not beholden to anybody to present the cases accurately or in a manner that we can better understand the options of the evidence. There's a lot of inferences that are presented as facts in the missing 411 cases, and a lot of counting the hits and ignoring the misses. It's missing 411. The whole concept is it's absolutely bottom line. It is the Texas sharpshooter fallacy on a missing person scale, on a world global missing person scales. It's just Texas sharpshooter. It's drawing circles around where people go missing. People go missing in national parks. National parks are rural, and people that come and visit them are not necessarily acclimated to a rural environment, and bad things happen. That's just the nature of it. So yeah, there's going to be more missing persons in national parks. I'm not going to dismiss the whole phenomena. We can go further into this further down the road, but I've rambled enough that I want to get into this a bit more. So most people nowadays are of the opinion that the Dennis Martin disappearance was one of a few different options. There was a suspicious vehicle that was seen, a white vehicle, and that somebody loaded a person into. I don't know how viable that option is. When they go into that, obviously bears are a real threat. Wild pigs are too, but with a bear or with a bear, it's more likely to do the silent ambush killing than what a pig would. A pig would probably have made quite a stir of attacking a little boy, whereas a bear, I think, could stealthily grab a child without it and kill it before the child could cry out and carry it off into the woods. A bear could do that. A cougar could do that. That's a cougar's MO. So an eastern cougar would have been able to pull that off for sure. All right, so let's see here. Oh, I had a map of Appalachia too. So we are basically looking in the yellow area here is where the national parks in the yellow and orange, but it's divided into counties. All right, so I've been exploring this for years and kind of again breaking my brain out of the missing 411 mindset to think that, oh, there's got to be links to all these drawn correlations and stuff. And there's a lot of inference about the wild men. And we'll get into the wild men here as I move forward. But the exploration of these topics has brought me to, I kept, on Reddit threads and missing 411 forums, I kept getting pointed back towards this YouTube channel called South Force 10. This is South Force 10, and this is what we're going to be watching. Okay, South Force 10 is basically a storytelling channel of Appalachian culture. It's got stories of ghost stories, stories about witches, haunted houses, evil places. But he's got a lot of content about the Dennis Martin case, and I have been watching them. And he's got a fantastic tale to tell about what he thinks or what he has been told, passed down by word of mouth, of what happened in the Dennis Martin case. So buckle in, and we are going to start right here at the beginning. Dennis Martin solved at last. These hills do have eyes. All right. Take us away, South Force 10.
Spence Field's probably about
that's not what I wanted to do.
40 miles that way right there.
I like doing this way.
But I'm going to tell you a little story while we walk here and do a little unedited video about Dennis Martin. Now, if you don't know who Dennis Martin is, and you don't know the story behind it, this ain't the place to come find it out. Because if you found yourself here, you should know all that.
And I explained the preamble to it and who he is and what happened with him. So hopefully that lays the groundwork for what this guy's about to tell us.
What I do want to tell you is what happened to him. A lot of us local know.
Yeah, so just to reiterate, he's saying in the 1940s, his uncles were paid by the federal government to go out and hunt people in the Appalachian Mountains. People. The government was paying Appalachians to hunt people.
Diversify from being unable to speak, Harry, to being able to speak a language. Some of them were inbred, long time inbred, and turned out.
Oh, we can't hear the video? Hold on. Let me start over again. Sorry. Here, see, this was a problem with using StreamYard is I can never get it to, because when I go to share screen and I share the window, because I share the whole window, it doesn't give me the checkbox to share the sound. I hope the sound's not just coming through my mic. Let me see. Share screen.
A lot of them was supposedly Cherokee Indians, the Trail of Tears, the Great Smoky Mountains, slipped off the trail. But no one knows exactly how they got there. We don't. Nobody knows. But they would come in and pay these guys about once a year to go kill these things.
Morning, Carol.
Because they knew the park was going to come in eventually. So don't know exactly how much money you get for everyone you kill.
So he's saying there was like a bounty on these wild men living in the mountains in Smoky Mountain National Park. That the government had a bounty on them, and these Appalachian people were being paid by the scalp of these wild men to clear them out for the national park.
This has always been an interesting grave to me. There's the original headstone. But yeah, not a lot of people around here know about it. It wasn't made big. It's probably kept it down to about 40, 50, 60 people who knew. And they would do this yearly. Sometimes 2 times a year is what I was told if they needed to.
So there were seasons. So there was like a season, like certain times a year they'd go out and say, hey, let's go hunt some humans out in the woods. Who were these wild men though, and what was their story? Were these another group of settlers who had settled one of these back valleys and lived in isolation? Was this a family living out in the woods that was self-sustaining, that your uncles were out there blasting with their shotguns? Or was this are you claiming that these were, I heard you mention the Native Americans, were these were your uncles out there shooting vestige populations of Native Americans holed up in the mountains? Were they out there killing the native population to make way for the park to come in? Or is the claim that they were out there killing a undiscovered subspecies of human? None of these are good scenarios. None of these is something that your uncle should be murdering. But I digress.
Kind of help thin them out.
Thin them out like they're freaking.
Thin
them out like it's overpopulation of deer.
Everything's great. Everything's going good. The only thing gets missing is a dog every now and then, a chicken, and everybody around here knows these people are doing it.
Kill people because they take your chicken. Kill someone because they took your livestock.
Sometimes they get a little braver. They come out of the woods, but that's who's doing it. They take chickens, dogs, cats, whatever they could catch. Well, when you're dealing with these people, they're wild. There's no guarantee what they're going to do. Till the one day the one took that boy, Dennis Martin. And when he took that boy, that's when the Green Berets came. Now, they didn't come in here to help search for that boy at all. That's why they use different radio channels. That's why they wouldn't work with the park. That's why they done their own thing. Their job was to exterminate these people.
So the Green Berets came in to exterminate.
So they came in and they done their job. They went back there and they exterminated and they killed these people. Just so happens it rained for days. So a lot of people were not in the park when a lot of this was going on, but they exterminated a bunch of them. Well, the guy that was over the case on the FBI, a lot of you may know, he committed suicide.
Right.
Well, he committed suicide because he went out and took a look at the body.
I guess that's something I did not talk about. That's a big sticking point for for David Paulides people too, for the missing 411 crowd. They're like, oh, this FBI investigator who was in charge of the Dennis Martin case, he committed suicide years later. And they speculated, oh, it's because of what he found out about these investigations of these missing people in the parks and what was really behind it, and he couldn't live with it. But I don't know. Suicide is a very personal thing for most people. It's not a decision anybody makes lightly. I don't know if being aware of inbred hillbillies and I say inbred hillbillies because that's the way that these are presented. In the notion of the title of this video, "The Hills Have Eyes." The Hills Have Eyes is about those were actually hillbillies that were mutated in New Mexico, though, with the bomb testing and stuff. But anyway, I digress. Yeah. Anyway, I'm just gonna play it. Sorry.
Bodies that was drug out of the park when they was killing these people, and a lot of them was children, women. A lot of them was skinny, deformed. I mean, some of them was like on the verge. You didn't call them big feet. Then the next one over could say words. There was no standard by what these people could do. Well, it was too much for the man. He wound up committing suicide.
I think that you're making an inference about why he committed suicide there. That's not grounded in anything. You don't know what this man had going on in his personal life and if there's interpersonal relationships, because generally something like suicide is going to be linked more to your interpersonal relationships than it is going to be to something like a career decision, unless the career decision is like ruining you, unless it's like a stock market crash and the guys jump out the window, that kind of thing. But just, I don't know, being exposed to the bizarre like this. I think there's an episode of X-Files based on this too, about the Peacock family, feral people in the mountains. They found like the deformed baby buried, and the chromosomes were all messed up. Anyway,
So, what are we going to tell people? What are we going to do? We can't tell them that we come in here and kill these things. We can't tell our tourist that brings billions and billions of dollars to these Smoky Mountains every year that,
oh honey, yeah, you can. You tell them that because that's what that brings tourists. Look at New Orleans. Look at well, Hannibal, Missouri, right here by where I live. The ghost stories about Mark Twain Cave and all the Mark Twain ghost stories. There's whole ghost tours they have all October long, or all July long too, down through Hannibal, Missouri. I think Louisiana and New Orleans. Those tours go year round. So yeah, having something like legends about wild men and monsters will bring tourists.
these big feet, wild men took their children. There's no way to know that we got them all. We can't guarantee them that. We'll just leave it unsolved. Unsolved to this day. No one knows what happened to Dennis Martin. But we know. There's people who live around here who know.
You don't know though. You've been told. I think we need to differentiate that because so far the story, as you've told me, is that there were people living back in the woods that may have been uh, of European descent and living in isolation, that may have been natives that escaped from the Trail of Tears to carve out an existence in the Appalachian Mountains, or it could have been a population of feral humanoids that are related to or are indeed Sasquatch or Bigfoot. Or what it sounds like you're presenting is that it was a mix of all three, which is absolutely bizarre to me. However, people are telling you that that's what these people were. The people who were hired to go out and murder these individuals in the woods, the people who were paid to basically enforce segregation and genocide. And then then there's an accusation that one of these people kidnapped Dennis Martin, or that they ate him. And therefore the federal government came in and exterminated, again, a population of a distinct population of people. So that's like a genocide. This is not the way that we would expect to interact with, at least not in the 60s. Come on.
And it's been passed down.
Passed down, right, as a war.
But that's why there will be no official report on what happened to Dennis Martin. So, you want to know, I guess, now the next question is, well, did they kill them all? Well, there's been a lot of unseen and crazy things go on in these mountains. I probably would stay off the trails in the nighttime. I would probably take the Allen Cave Bluff Trail while there was still a lot of daylight left. And I dang sure wouldn't go into these woods by myself, because these hills do have eyes. South Force 10 here. Thanks, Ed.
Title drop. I had to bounce for a second. I had a fly floating in my coffee cup, so I just went and got one of my iced coffees instead. Probably gonna finish that. I gotta go to the grocery store and get more coffee today anyway. Yeah, genocide is the U.S. Army's bread and butter. I don't doubt, but that there is a distinct species of humans living in the mountains that were eradicated by the U.S. Army in the 1960s. With no evidence at all, no physical evidence, I find it dubious. I hate to be a stickler about it, but that's just my opinion. But there's a part 2, and I do want to explore this a little bit further. So, y'all are gonna have to, just give me a little bit of a leeway here, because I do have to bounce around on this one a bit, because he does talk about a few different things that are not.
I'll do a little update video here like I promised y'all.
South Force 10.
It took a while. It's been so hot. I've been able to get out and do one. We are on the riverbank here of the Little Pigeon River. So here's a little update video that I promised I would do on Dennis Martin. But it's hard to do this video because there's a lot of macabre things about the case. A lot of stuff I struggle with doing. I know there's been a lot of questions. Y'all have had a lot of questions and stuff. Ask me, so
I'm going to speed him up a little bit. That southern draw is a little slow. Do 1.5.
Shaking the phone. Try not to, nearly as bad as I did in that last video, but we'll get right with it here. I was debating on. I've got a lot of stories to tell. And all these were passed down to me from the stuff with Dennis Martin, from hunting the Bigfoot, from a lot of other stories. Just mountain folk, mountain lore. But most of it's just been passed down to me.
So now he's designating the shooting the people, his uncle's going out and shooting these people as hunting Bigfoot, which is a little bit different characterization than what he had said before. He made it very much like they were people.
And how that happened was I was raised by my aunts and uncles. My mom was sick, dad was truck driving. And they were a lot older people. I listened a lot. I went hunting with my uncle while he took me fox hunting. Went with a lot of older men, and I just said,
right. I don't think in what you guys are talking about out here, as far as the being genetically, they wouldn't have been genetically distinct enough to be their own species if they were interbreeding with another species of hominid. Like if Bigfoot, I'm going to say it, if Bigfoot was a species of hominid that was indigenous to the area and did interbreed with these people in the Appalachian Mountains, they wouldn't be a distinct species. They would be a hybrid. It would be Homo sapien, and then you put X, and then it'd be whatever the species name for the Sasquatch would be. Like, for instance, it'd be like Homo sapien X Sasquatch is how it would read if they were a hybrid between the two species. But yeah, that's what it would be. It wouldn't even be a distinct species of its own.
If they're listening, for y'all who don't know anything about it, when you go fox hunting, you don't really tramp through the woods with a gun. You build a fire and you sit around the fire and you just talk. And you wait for the dogs to run and chase the fox. That's basically it. So I listen to a lot of their stories, a lot of my aunts, uncles, grandmother's stories. A lot of them was scary, horror stories. Stuff that you wouldn't normally tell a kid these days. You know how people are nowadays. Times have changed.
Okay, boomer.
Look at Saturday morning cartoons. I have several stories I'm debating on. Either telling those or doing the Dennis Martin update. I've got a story where my aunt confronted the devil in her front yard.
Yeah.
Years ago. I almost cost her life.
So it's like a devil in was it the devil in Tom Walker or whatever?
There's another story. An old lady who lived up what we call Green Hall.
A witch. Okay.
Back then claimed she was a witch.
Mm-hmm.
I got all these stories to tell. I'll try to put them on here. Dennis Martin.
There we go.
Well, I would sit and listen to my uncle and these other men that would go on these hunts. And then their dads would go on these hunts. For Dennis Martin. I mean, not for Dennis Martin, but for these things that took Dennis Martin. They would go and they would be rewarded by bringing these bodies in. They would have a meetup place, and they would get paid for every body they brought in. Now, I talked to my sister, since I've done that last video, kind of asked her some questions. She's a lot older than I am. And I asked her a few questions, and she told me when I called these things people, that's where I was wrong. She told me there was nothing remotely human about these things. She told me a story once when she was a little girl that the neighbors had called them.
Why would you say nothing remotely human about them? Everything about Sasquatch and the lore surrounding it kind of implies that it's a hominid of some stripes. Definitely a primate, if anything.
Peeping in the window of their child.
Mm-hmm.
They had knew it had been doing it. They've been trying to catch it for a while. She never saw it. They made her go inside, and she said that she could hear this thing screaming. And she said it was the most ungodly scream that you ever heard. She says it still wakes her up today with nightmares. She's nearly 70 years old today. On good health.
She never saw it. Then how does she know it was one of these things? Just hearing the sound of someone screaming?
She remembers a lot of this stuff. She heard a lot of it too. But anyway, people ask me questions. The number one question I got was, do I know David Colitis? Or have I got my video to him? Or has he seen my video? No, I don't know him. I have no idea if he has seen my video. I don't have any way of getting my video to him or in contact with him, but I would be more than glad to talk to him if he wanted to talk. More than happy.
Oh, spooky. It's a state of mind. You say kids these days. Anytime I hear somebody say kids these days, that's my automatic response. Are cyborgs humans? I guess they would be, at least the parts of them that were flesh, that were organic, would be human.
The hard part is a lot of people know about Dennis Martin and they want to know about the body. Well, nothing's really been confirmed about the body. There have been a lot of rumors, and that's all this is. It's just a rumor. But some people claim that they did find some of his remains, and they didn't want to tell the family. They didn't want the family to view these remains that they was actually pretty gruesome. These people were cannibals. And
so their claim here is that they found Dennis Martin's remains, but they were partially eaten, so they didn't tell the family. I don't think that's how that would work either, but maybe I'm wrong.
What they found, they destroyed when they destroyed the people they went into the park to exterminate, the Green Berets. Did the Martin family ever know this happened to their child? Yes, I think the guy's name, McCarter. I think Dwight McCarter, I think he told the family what happened. Now, I can't be 100% sure on that. I know that he knows about these things and stuff. him being in the park most of his life. And I've heard comments that he's made on TV and stuff. So yeah, how much he told him, I don't know. You know, I'm sure he probably didn't tell him never found a body or anything like that. Like I say, that's just rumor anyway. But
you do have a good point there, John. It's always the people who are already predispositioned to believe that that supernatural experiences are popular, are possible, who have supernatural experiences. Their brains are already primed to interpret phenomena as supernatural. So things like witchcraft and demons and devils and all that stuff, especially when you're out in the woods. Uh, it is a real psychological phenomena to have these. What's the word I'm looking for? It's basically the word panic is derived from the feeling you get when you're alone in the woods and it's really quiet. Because it's supposed to be that silence is supposed to be the music of Pan's flute or his lyre, the thing that's supposed to be that silence is the music that he makes with that, and it's supposed to drive you mad when you're out in the woods by yourself and there's nothing but silence. That's where the word panic comes from. So when you experience that, there are cases where you can have uh, audible or visual hallucinations and things like that when you're in that state. If you're already predispositioned to think that you are the supernatural, witchcraft, curses, spells, magic, demons, ghosts, spirits, those kind of things are out in the world out to get you, you can interpret those experiences, that panic that you have, as a supernatural experience.
that was another question that I got. The other question was, where did these things come from? And since I had talked to my sister, she let me know that there were two different types of these fertile men, these fertile people. There was the kind that looked like a man, woman. But then there was another kind that was bigger, hairier, meaner. Some people claim that they had fangs. I don't know. I've not ever witnessed any of these myself. But that's what I got from her. There was actually, I think those would probably fall more in line with the Bigfoot type. So these things would go over into Townsend, Tennessee. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not, but you can look at it on Google Earth and find it, see how close it lies to the park. And when Townsend very first started getting his first grocery store, restaurant and stuff, it was real convenient for them to get into these dumpsters and find food. And I think that's kind of what started a lot of it. You know, they would come in, they'd take these people's cats and dogs and pigs and whatever they could find. And by the way, Dennis Martin was not the first child.
Look at that. Logan's all over it. Thank you, Logan. That's exactly the reference I was making.
Smokies. He was the most publicized child because he was from Knoxville. And you might as well have been from Atlanta, Georgia, or New York City, because that's how much difference there is between Knoxville, Townsend, Tennessee, Cato, Forsyth County. I mean, it may be 25, 30 miles separated, but it's a world of difference. So that's why it was made such a big deal.
And now there's it's kind of a fallacy here that only people from Cades Cove can understand what the culture of Cades Cove is like. That my segregated, isolated community is unique, and there may be some merit to that. But as far as let's say wood lore, I guess, and the way that wood lore is passed down through generations, and the way that that this knowledge is garnered through people over generations is not unique to Cades Cove, though, because there's lore like this from all over Appalachia and beyond. There's lore like that right here in my own backyard. We had the Momo, Missouri monster thing, the Monkey Run. They had a report from the 1800s of an orangutan swimming across the Mississippi right here, just a couple miles down the river from me. So in the 1800s, an orangutan. So this isn't unique to, these aren't unique kind of sightings to Cades Cove.
But yeah, there was a few that went missing way back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. There have been more missing than what's been told. So I've done something big. But the Dennis Martin, he really shined the light on it. So that's when the park officials decided they had to do something about this. They can't have people going into the park. This can't happen again. This could not happen again. So the Green Berets come in and they did what they did. And when I said in my last video, a lot of us locals know about this. I guess what I mean by that is a lot of the people that I grew up with knew. Everybody in my world knew. In my short world that I was related to, they knew because people in my family were involved in these hunts. No, not everybody on the street, walking down the street of Severe Fishing Forge knew.
I mean, I can lay down a scenario here where, backwoods family with maybe European and Native American ancestry was carving out a little lifestyle back in the Smoky Mountains and up and into the 1960s. And an individual of this family did do a predatory attack on the Martin boy, and the Green Berets did come in and kill these people. I could even concede that that's a possibility. The FBI doesn't tell us everything. The government doesn't tell us everything. I understand that. Who's been killed for what reason, especially in the 1960s when there wasn't digital media. So any reports on this would have been hard copies and could have been filed away in a drawer far, far away. I concede that. What I question, I'm not saying that did happen. I'm just saying that's a thing that could have happened. It's a realistic possibility that the government did go out in and kill a family living in the mountains in relation to the Dennis Martin disappearance. Maybe there's a shootout, even things like that. Possibilities are there. However, that these people were hybrids between humans and something else, that they were inbred to the point of deformity and all this these other claims. I don't disagree that they could have been skinny and malnourished. Living off the land is a rough lifestyle, but the notion that they were beast people is what I find dubious.
What's going on? So that's another thing somebody asked me. If everybody knew that this was happening, then how did the Martin family not know? So that's another question I got asked. But no, it's just everyone that was in my world, everyone that I knew when I was growing up, some of the neighbors' kids, their parents was in on this too. Everybody lived in that little holler, they was all privy to this information that went on, and probably the next hollow over, they had no idea. So no, not everyone knew.
Well, that's what I was talking about with him saying, "Oh, it's isolated and only people from Cades Cove know." But that's not how lore works. It gets carried. No matter how big of a cap you try to put on it, people talk. You don't. You people in that holler. They didn't. They have cousins in the next holler over, and they meet them at Thanksgiving. They go spend the holidays with them. They tell stories. And then those people go over to the next holler over, maybe even into the big city like Knoxville, and spread that story spreads there, and then it's all over the place. So it doesn't stay as much as you want to make a case that it stays isolated within this groups of people. People talk, people tell stories. This lore travels and changes over time. Maybe the interpretation you've heard is changed from the original as well.
Everyone couldn't know because this was such an illegal thing that they were doing, and you couldn't tell everybody. So, and by the way, these videos aren't for everybody to listen to. This
such an illegal thing. Are you talking about your uncle's genociding these people in the mountains, or the federal government coming in and exterminating them completely? I mean, both of those things sound like they'd be human rights violations against these people. And you make a case that they're not people or that they are a different species of people, but either way, under what grounds do you think that your uncles had to go out and murder these people? I mean, obviously, after the Dennis Martin case, with a child being involved in disappearing, I could see how a situation like that could escalate into a tragic situation for the people living in the mountains. I can see how that would escalate. But just before the Dennis Martin thing, when you're talking about them going out in in their trucks with their shotguns and hunting these people for money. What is the justification to murder these people, whether they are or are not uh, related to a different species of human or hybrid or even a Bigfoot? What is the justification to go out and murder them? That's what I want to understand.
Upsets you, or you're part of the Martin family, and you don't already know this information, then don't listen to it. Don't play it any further than this. If this disturbs you, you don't believe it, or whatever, then I'm just telling you the things that I was told as I was growing up. They had no reason to lie. They had no reason to make this stuff up. They talked about hunting these things.
I'm not saying they lied or made it up. Stories get bigger and embellished over time. It's just the way that it works.
More than just what happened with Dennis Martin.
Everybody's talking about my girl Lizzo in the side chat. Hell yeah, Lizzo rocks.
He was just a small part of the conversation. But I just passed on what was told to me when I was growing up, sitting around the fire, listening. When they would describe it, they would describe how the park wanted to come into this area, but was afraid to because they had heard the stories of these beasts living in these woods, and they wanted to clear it out before they moved into the area.
Why are they beasts? So this is what's driving me crazy about this video. You keep going back and forth between describing them as if they were some kind of animalistic beast to some kind of people that are living back in there. You say there's two kinds. The one kind are beasts, and the other kind are humans that can talk. You don't. I want to see where you're getting these correlations and such.
So they did. They cleared them out.
Mm-hmm.
But one got brave one day, and they're stealthy. What I've been told, you could be standing right beside one in the park, and unless you smelled it and stunk real bad, you wouldn't have no idea you were standing there beside it. So,
see, and that's Bigfoot lore right there with them being smelly. I get that. I can concur to that.
I'm sure Dennis Martin probably never seen this thing coming. And from what I've been told, it probably snapped his neck the moment that it picked him up. And I could be wrong. He could have took him back very alive at that moment. I know there was another family that seen one of these things running. They could describe what they saw, but it was kept out of the news. It was kept out of the media. So that right there should tell you something. I think the family's name was the Key family. And that's odd because they hold a big key to this information.
Only 3/5 of people, right, D?
They kind of keep it quiet, so it was. Let's get quiet. I think the Martin family found out about it and confronted them. They kind of played it down. But this has been kept quiet around here all these years. And I can remember my grandfather telling me not to ever talk about this. But it would cause trouble one day for me. That there's a lot of money that changes hands around here in this county. Depends on these tourists to come, spend their money. And when you get a story out there like this, that scares the most visited part of the country, well, then they're going to go somewhere else. Then somebody's going to lose some money, and then somebody's in trouble. So he always told me not to repeat none of this or tell what I was told.
I was told not to repeat this or tell anybody what I was told, so I put it on YouTube, and it has 40,000 views so far. 40,000 views. Don't tell anybody though.
I have never told anything about it. And one day I got on the internet and I saw that all these people were talking about this, and I thought it was strange. All these people talking. Here I am sitting and been told what I know. So I thought, well, I'm just going to put that video out there in case something ever happens to me. There'll be something left behind. Maybe somebody will know one day. Right people play that video. I had no idea it's going to get as many views as it has got. But anyway, I know a lot of people said that this was false and it was a lie. And not a lick of truth in it. No proof. No, there's no proof. The government does not leave proof laying around. There's no proof. Like I say, it's just stories that was told. And you can believe it.
Right, with no proof, and you believe it. I understand. I don't doubt that South Force 10 might believe these tales, but I don't know if I believe the people that told South Force 10 these tales. That's kind of my position right now.
It doesn't matter to me one way or another. I'm just a messenger here telling you messages that I was told when I was young. And there's a lot more of them. I'll tell you more here in a couple of days, some of the ones I told you there about and stuff. Some real interesting stuff, some scary stuff, some stuff children don't need to listen to or hear.
Mm-hmm.
I know when I was young, it bothered me for a long time hearing some of the stuff that I was told because it's just ancient up in the night.
I'm sorry if this is hard to listen to. This accent is actually soothing for me to listen to. Because my grandma and her family, I have a fondness for Appalachian accent and listening to just stories being told with that accent. So yeah, if you all aren't digging on this though, I can make sure to vet for that sort of thing. But this is the voice these kind of stories are supposed to be told to my brain. And my grandma did have stories about wild people and stuff. So maybe sometime I'll share those with you guys. She had some stories about cattle mutilation too.
It's one of it's very horrifying. Very strange place in the world is these mountains and these hills. Till then,
See,
I guess I'll be seeing y'all later. Good night.
all right, so I do think that that maybe this gentleman's sister is the one dragging this along like that, but that's just speculation on my part. Maybe it is something his uncles told him because he's like, oh, my sister told me this, my sister told me that, my uncles and said this and that. It's a lot of oral tradition being passed down. So not necessarily blaming South Force 10. He's just sharing the lore, which is seems to be the basis of his channel. If you go and look at what he's doing, he's not saying that. I mean, obviously, he presents the narrative says, it has to be. This could possibly be true. But there's ghost stories, the ghost of the Moonshine Holler, Death Omen of the Smokies, things like that. He's talking about folklore, so I'm not gonna bust his chops about this too much. It is sad that a real disappearance of a real child was caught up in this lore. I wish that he would be more courteous with the language that he uses, is saying, "I know this happened," because he kind of waffles and goes back and forth. And I know this happened to, oh, this is just what I was told happened. It's, this is what the story has been passed down to me, and they didn't have any reason to lie. Now you can present it that way, but don't say I know this happened. There's a child involved here. This was someone's kid. This was someone's little boy that they never got to see again. They never got to see finish school or go on a first date or have any of these experiences throughout life, have the talk about birds and bees, whatever. Any of these first experiences, that parent never gets to share that with their kid because of this disappearance. So I'm not saying that specifically a South Force 10 was being flippant. Maybe a little bit. Maybe what should have been done was that disclaimer that you put in the last 2 minutes of the video should have went at the beginning. If you're a member of the Martin family or are deeply disturbed by this, blah blah blah, don't finish watching this. This is lore. This is oral lore passed down through my family. Something along those lines. A disclaimer. That's what you need to do moving forward with your channel, I think. But we may visit South Force 10 again. He had some stuff on a video I started watching the other night about witchcraft. Yeah, the witches of the Great Smoky Mountains. I am interested in that because again, my family's kind of tied into that, and I like that that part of our folklore for Appalachian people. Anyway, that was Cryptic Corner. We talked about the alleged cannibals of the Smoky Mountains that are associated with the disappearance of Dennis Martin, among other people in the Smoky Mountain region. I hope you enjoyed that. If you're watching this on Cryptic Corner on Friday night, thank you so much for tuning in and sticking around. It was a fun one, and got to explore some folklore and some family history for Bree. So thanks again, and please remember to be kind and take care, and we'll see you next time. All right, so now we are going to be moving in to Creation Watch. And y'all are going to be shocked how short this video is, but don't worry, because we are going to be breaking this down. So let me once again. This was a YouTube short that popped up in my feed. So we have prosperity gospel preacher Talon Michael, who used to be an atheist, is a lot of his shtick. So I do follow him on one of my stock channels just to keep up with if he says anything too wild and out there. I can talk about it, but he's going to talk about some holy relics here. So let's dig in. It's a clip. I might watch it through a couple times before I start responding to it. I don't know how far into it is. Actually, let me refresh it because it should just start right from the beginning.
This is undeniable proof that Jesus is real. Historians actually found Jesus' robe, and people travel from all over the planet to come and see it. But that's not all. These are the scriptures that Jesus read from when he would teach people. And these are the nails that they put into his hands and into his feet when they crucified him. And this is the cloth that he was buried with. You can even see the outline of his body and the outline of his face. If you believe in Jesus and you want to know how to go to heaven, go watch the video I pinned in the comments. This is undeniable proof that Jesus is real. Historians actually found Jesus' robe.
All right. So first thing we're looking at here is this robe. Now, fun thing about Jesus's robe, the seamless robe of Jesus, as it's known, the holy robe, the holy tunic, holy coat, honorable robe, the chiton of the Lord. It's the robe that was worn by Jesus during and shortly before his crucifixion. Had no seams in it. There's actually some scripture about it that we might read here in a minute. So there's a few different traditions about that, and that's the funny thing here. It's like historians haven't just found one robe; they found at least three that Jesus wore. So he was dressed in layers at the crucifixion, or two of these robes, or none of these robes are authentic. That's always a possibility. The robe that we're looking at in this image, let's see, does he show? I think there's a different angle of it here. There we go. This is, I believe, the robe of Trier, which is Constantine the Great, the first Roman emperor to convert to Christianity. His mother was like a Christian zealot. She was like really into the lore of Christ and she went to the Holy Land and collected relics. The robe of Trier is supposed to be one of the relics that she collected. She also got like pieces of the true claw or the true cross, things like that. So she's really important figure in the spread of Christianity to European culture at large. She did bring a lot of that in with her relics in building churches. She had a monastery commission just specifically to hold in Trier. I think I'm saying that right, Trier. Yeah, and this was that robe, allegedly. But this robe doesn't actually show up in any historical. And again, this is Constantine, so we're talking like 300 to 350 is when this stuff's going on. No historical documents of the robe appear until the 12th century, and then it's just referenced. But it does reference that it had been shown before. It's not like a new thing. It's just been discovered. It's something that's traditionally held there. It wasn't until the 1500s, Emperor Maximilian was like, yeah, I want to see this robe. He's, he wants to went to the cathedral, demanded to see it. And rumor got out about that, that this is the actual thing that you can see. You can go see the robe of Jesus, and suddenly it piqued people's interest. And in the 1500s, up until 2012, we have multiple pilgrimages in order to go see this robe. But that's not the only robe. So there's this one that we see in this image here, with its folklore surrounding it. It's been like coated in a rubber to preserve it. And I don't know that was a good idea. Um, fun fact about the Trier robe, though, is that the German Catholic Church, the seceded the schism sect of the German Catholic Church, was based on the viewing of the robe in 1844. So that's an interesting little factoid about this particular robe. But there were other robes as well. I'm going to try to pronounce this word. The Argenteuil tradition says that the robe was so the Empress Irene gave the gift of the seamless robe to Charlemagne in 800. And Charlemagne gave it to his daughter. Then it was preserved in the church a Benedict monks. And let's see, they were worried about the French Revolution, so they cut it into strips. I don't know why. And separated them. So there's pieces all over Europe, allegedly, of this robe. At the same time that the robe in Trier is being presented as the authentic robe too. So there's two robes there. And then, of course, you have the Eastern Orthodox, which has a rich tradition surrounding the robe, because the Eastern Orthodox Church believes that I think it was a rabbi bought the robe from one of the soldiers that one of the Roman soldiers that crucified Jesus, and brought it back back to Georgia, and it has this long line of descent for that too, much more detailed than the Trier robe, even of passing through hands and who had it and where it was and where it's displayed at. It is still has portions of it displayed in Moscow to this day by the Russian Orthodox Church. So, which robe is the real robe? Which robe is authentic? I don't. In my opinion, is none of them. But I'm not big on holy relics in general. I haven't seen any that I think are real. But let's move along past the robe and see what else Talon has to show us, because he's got
From all over the planet to come and see it. But that's
this. This is the Gospel of Barnabas. Yeah, the Gospel of Barnabas is a forgery. It's not canonical. And it was supposed to have been written by Barnabas, the disciple of Jesus. Has gold letters on leather sheets. As far as this version of it goes, I think it's been thoroughly debunked by multiple methods, and is believed to have been a medieval forgery. And it's funny that this guy, as an evangelical, would present this particular book as evidence of Jesus, because this book is often cited by Muslims as proof that Islam is the true faith, and that even Jesus recognized the coming of Muhammad. Muhammad's name is mentioned literally in the book. If Jesus had that, keep in mind that's 800 years before Muhammad was born. So there's things in this book that I would not think an evangelical would want to embrace or to incorporate into their theology, to say that this book is actually the book of Christ. Because then you're saying, okay, so Christ predicted Muhammad. Muhammad was the real deal. And then we have to talk about cutting the moon in half and Allah and all this other stuff that comes intricately interlaced with Islam.
not all. These are the scriptures that Jesus read from when he would teach people. And these are the nails that they put into his hands and
The nails. Now, I'm glad that he chose these nails, because there are nails that go with the seamless robe in Trier. There are with the one that he showed an image of this robe, but he's mixing and matching because those aren't the nails that go with that robe. St. Helen brought some nails back too, and they were much more. They were iron and they were in much better shape than these, and they have special like gilded cases that they're kept in and such, so they look really fancy now. But they were just straight iron nails. These ones that he's shown us here are a little bit different. These are Roman nails, and the fun thing about this is that I recognized these nails from a HiveScience article a couple of years ago. I'm going to pull that up now for us to see. So, that pull it over? Yes. Okay. So, were these the nails used to crucify Jesus? New evidence revives controversial idea. The two Roman era iron nails are from an unmarked box delivered to Tel Aviv University. New research suggests they could be the two nails lost from the tomb of the Jewish high priest Caiaphas, who presided over the condemnation of Jesus. Two corroded Roman era nails that some have suggested pinned Jesus to the cross appear to have been used in an ancient crucifixion, according to a new study. This research has reignited debate over the origins of the nails. The new analysis suggests the nails were lost from the tomb of the Jewish high priest Caiaphas, who reportedly handed Jesus over to the Roman execution. Slivers of wood and bone fragments suggest that they may have been used in a crucifixion. Geologist, try this name, Aryeh Shimron, the lead author of the research published in July in the Journal of Archaeological Discovery, said that the link to Caiaphas and the latest evidence did not prove absolutely the nails were used to crucify Jesus in Jerusalem in 33 AD, but they strengthen the claim. I certainly do not want to say that these nails are from the crucifixion of Jesus of Nazareth, Shimron told HiveScience, but they are nails from a. But are they nails from a crucifixion? Very likely, yes. Unfortunately, there were probably tens of thousands of people that were crucified besides the doomsday prophet known as Jesus. Where did the nails originate? The ornate ossuary, decorated with motifs of flowers and marked in Aramaic, Joseph, son of Caiaphas, was found in a first century tomb in Jerusalem in 1990. Two corroded iron nails were found in the same tomb, but were later lost. Israel Hershkovitz, a renowned anthropologist at Tel Aviv University, received the nails in an unmarked box from the collection of Niku Haas, an Israeli anthropologist who died in 1986. According to the Israel Antiquities Authority, the IAA, Haas obtained them from a tomb excavated in the 1970s, decades before the Caiaphas tomb was discovered, according to Haaretz. But the IAA doesn't know which tomb the nails came from, and no records of their provenance has ever been found. In the controversial 2011 documentary called The Nails of the Cross, however, filmmaker and journalist Simcha Jacobovici, I think you said that, Jacobovici, there we go, Jacobovici, suggested that the nails were those lost from the Caiaphas tomb, and that the high priest may have been so overcome with guilt about the crucifixion of Jesus that he kept the nails as a memento. Harrods reported that some scholars, though no names were given, of course, that's weasel words, have called the latest research highly speculative. But Shimron, a geologist based in Jerusalem who's retired from the Israel Geological Survey, said the new study gave weight to the documentary's ideas. Shimron has not studied the two nails that are subject to Jakobovic's 2011 documentary before now, though he was involved in a 2015 study tied to another Jacobovici controversial documentary on the archaeology of Jesus. Experts think the nails are long enough to have nailed up hands in a crucifixion and may have been bent upward to prevent the hands from being lifted off. Workers widening a road discovered the first century Caphaeus tomb in 1990 in a neighborhood in the southeast of Jerusalem. The tomb contained 12 ossuaries, one marked with the name Cleopha and another ornately decorated with motifs of flowers marked with the Aramaic name Yosef Bar Kuafa, or Joseph, son of Caiaphas in English. Most archaeologists now accept that the tomb was used to bury the first century high priest Caiaphas and his family, the study says. Caiaphas was, sorry, I'm losing my place. I keep struggling with that name, Caiaphas, who is mentioned. I don't know why it's twice like that. A typo, I guess. Who is mentioned several times in both the Christian New Testament and a history of the Jews written in the late first century by Flavius Josephus, our good friend who is often cited by apologists regarding the historicity of Jesus. Presided over a sham trial of Jesus for blasphemy, after which Jesus was handed over to the Roman governor Pontius Pilate for execution according to the Gospel of Matthew. The execution was reportedly carried out on Friday, April 3rd, 33, when Jesus was nailed to the cross, a common method of capital punishment in Roman times. The two nails were discovered at Tel Aviv University and matched the chemical signature of the ossuaries in the Caiaphas tomb and have traces of an unusual fungus found there. In the latest study, Shimron and his co-author compared samples from the two nails with sediments from the ossuaries of Caiaphas tomb. Stone chests used to hold the bones for people after they had decayed for about a year on a rock shelf. It found that not only did the physical and chemical signatures of the nails in the ossuaries match, but they also seemed to be unique. For example, the ratios of isotopes of carbon and oxygen, variants of these elements in both sets of samples suggest they both came from an abnormally humid environment, and they both had significant flowstone deposits, layers of calcite carbonate formed by flowing water. These findings match the conditions of the Caiaphas tomb, which is located near an ancient aqueduct and often would have been flooded by its overflow. The researchers also found evidence of both on both the nails and the ossuaries of a specific fungus, an unusual type of yeast that grows only in very damp conditions and has been found in no other tomb in Jerusalem. I think the nails came from that tomb. That's a good case to make too. If that fungus is not found, if that yeast is not found in any other tombs, but this one, that's a good case to be made. We also do need to take into account where the The nails may have been stored between the discovery and to when they were delivered to the Tel Aviv University. We don't know where they were for that 30-year period. So keep that in mind. It might have been longer than that. Let me scroll back up. What was the year that they were delivered to Tel Aviv? Okay, he died in 86. The tomb was excavated in the 70s. But no provenances is the problem that we have with these nails. So what we have to go on is basically this evidence, like with the fungus and stuff. So let's go on. Their analysis of the nails with an electron microscope also found found slivers of wood on the nails, which they recognized as cedar. A tiny fragment of bone, unfortunately now fossilized. Those discoveries heightened the possibility that the nails came from a crucifixion, but they did not prove it, Shimron said. Yeah, I'm perfectly fine with accepting that these nails came from Roman crucifixion. As it said above, crucifixion was a common form of execution at the time. And let's see, I'm going to check in with the comments here before I get into this next section here, because this will probably be it for the day. So let me pop back over the comments before we finish up with the mysterious nails. Oh, not that way. There we go. Okay, so let me check out what my people are saying. Undeniable proof, right? Okay, there we go. Yep. Quill, it's undeniable. So if I deny it, then I'm denying the undeniable. That makes me wrong, right? Okay. Why on earth would Caiaphas keep the nails of someone he didn't believe was the Messiah? Yeah, it doesn't make much sense. Not to say that there wasn't somebody he could have at some point in time believed was the Messiah that got executed. There were a lot of guys running around doing stuff like Jesus at the time. I guess that's the point that I want to stress. There were a lot of people doing the Christ thing, doomsday prophecies and such. So, yes, is this the joke from The Crow? Jesus Christ walks into a bar and he hands the innkeeper 3 nails and he says, "Can you put me up for the night?" I always think of The Crow it's October now, so it's crow season. Jesus had a yeast infection confirmed. Were nails invented for crucifixion? I've never been curious before. I think nails were probably around a lot longer before that. Ergot, yeah, that would be. That wasn't the fungus, was it? Was that really the fungus? Because ergot is the fungus that makes people hallucinate. So it gets like into the grain stalks, and suddenly people start having mass hallucinations of witches and werewolves and stuff. No Jesus DNA was left over, unfortunately. I gotta agree. Slivers of wood is silly evidence. Nails are made to go into wood. Yeah, it's the proof that the nails did what they wanted or they were meant to do. The sliver of bone, though, is interesting. But is it sliver of human bone? It doesn't even say human bone. I'm still here working on. Oh, you're good, Sandy. Thank you for hanging out. We'd have to match the Jesus DNA with his father. Anyone have a sample? Greg, you're so silly. Fill in the gaps of the DNA like Jurassic Park style, right? Brilliant. Seems weird that he would be racked with guilt over one of several thousand people crucified, right? Probably hundreds at least that he had crucified specifically through his position of authority. Why Are we assuming that Jesus was the one that he had remorse for and kept the nails from? Not to say he didn't keep nails from somebody who was crucified, but why Jesus? All right, here we go. We're going to wrap it up here with this last section. Mysterious nails. The IAA says that their records show that 2 iron nails were also found in Caiaphas's tomb, one inside an unmarked ossuary and another on the ground near the ornate ossuary, possibly where it fell when it was disturbed by tomb robbers, but they were later lost. The excavator of the tomb suggested they may, why am I all over the place making up my own words? Suggested they might have been used to scratch inscriptions in the ossuary, but the idea was never investigated, Shimron said. The new study indicated that the nails from Tel Aviv University were indeed those lost from the Caiaphas tomb, despite the IAA's denial, he said. So the reason why the IAA is denying that is because their nails, what provenance they have of them, put them 20 years before the Caiaphas tomb was discovered. So they're suggesting that they can't be from that tomb because the nails were in possession of, what was his name? Archaeologist Niku Haas, who died in 1986. That's before the Caiaphas tomb was even excavated, because that was in, I think it said 1990. Where was the timestamp on that? Yeah, anyway. What was that time? Yeah, in 1990, right there. So 1990. So this guy died, we're in his collection. He died in 86. So that could have been before that. So I have to go with the IAA on that they probably, but they had the fungus on them from the Caiaphas tomb. So it's kind of a mystery, right? Where were we? According to the theory presented in Jacobovich's documentary, they might have been buried with Caiaphas because crucifixion nails were thought to be magical, a belief noted in ancient Jewish writings, and because Caiaphas is only known for his role in the crucifixion of Jesus, it's possible that the nails were linked with that event, although it can only be a supposition, Shimron said. Hershkovitz, who still has possession of the 2 nails, told HiveScience he was not convinced by the latest study, but he did not rule out the possibility that the nails came from the Caiaphas tomb. The nails are long enough to have been used on a person's hands in crucifixion, and they are bent upward at the end, perhaps to prevent the hands from being lifted off the cross. But the presence of bone fragments did not prove the nails were from a crucifixion, because bones from the tomb may have stuck to the nail. Ossuaries are full of human bones, he says. Still, there is a possibility, and we have to keep an open mind for every possibility as scientists, Hershkovitz said, which I agree with. So, as you can see, there's a lot of speculation about these nails. And lastly,
to his feet when they crucified him. And this is the
shroud
cloth that he was buried with. You can even see the outline of his body and the outline of his face. If you believe in Jesus and you want to know how to go to heaven, go watch the video I pinned in the comments.
All right, let's go through this one more time.
It's undeniable proof that Jesus is real. Historians actually found Jesus' robe.
3 of them. 2 of them are cut into shreds. This one's still in one piece, coated in rubber, in tier. They all have their own line of lore behind them, but none of them are suggested by any historians to be authentic.
And people travel from all over the planet to come and see it. But
right?
That's not all. These are the scriptures that Jesus read from when he would teach people.
This is a medieval forgery that is written to convince Christians that Islam is the true faith.
And these are the nails that they put into his hands and into his feet when they crucified him.
That's all speculation. There's a lot of inference being made from that. Were these nails used in crucifixion? Possibly. They were also, again, like it said in the article, used in or they were found in a tomb where human bones are. So having human bone fragments on them is not all that surprising, and having wood fragments on them, considering they're nails, as Matthew has pointed out, kind of was what would be expected with a nail. With a used nail, would be wood fragments on them. The fungus matches up with Caiaphas's tomb. However, again, nails found in a tomb are not necessarily evidence that they're crucifixion nails. Coffin nails and crucifixion nails are popularly used in mysticism and folk magic, so it's also something to keep in mind. And
this is the cloth that he was buried with. You can even see the outline of his body.
in the Shroud of Turin, I have covered ad nauseum on previous videos. I think there's I've done 2 videos now on the Shroud of Turin. If you're interested in that, they are in my back catalog, and I was trying to see if I can't remember to put them into the comment, or into the video description below. I'll try to remember to do that. But yeah, we've covered the Shroud of Turin a great deal. Anyway, that is all I have for you this morning. So to recap, we went over the Dennis Martin investigation in CryptoCorner, Cannibal Hillbillies, and all the good stuff attached to that, including Bigfoot and feral people and speculation. We watched some someone tell some folklore about it. Then we went into holy relics. We discussed the seamless robe, there's a name for the nails. Here's the name for the nails. They are called the triclavinism, because there's 3 nails, 1 through each hand and 2 through the feet. Those are the nails used to crucify Jesus. And we talked about the briefly on the ancient Bible with the Gospel of Barnabas and all that. So thank you so much for joining me today. Please remember to be kind, to take care, and we will see you next week. Hopefully, I have planned to have a special guest host with me next week, and we are going to be talking about some really cool stuff, including super weapons. So don't miss next week's Live from the Hive. If you don't catch it, you might miss out on a miracle, because there's also going to be a miracle that we discuss. So be kind, take care, and we will see you next week. Love from the Hive. Bye.